Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Right. So is everybody feeling well fed at this point? Hopefully. So I wanted to try something a little different tonight. I wanted to try reading a story that I wrote quite a few years ago now and showing some of the illustrations as we go. And I had no idea when I wrote this book that it would still be in print all these years later. I had no idea it would be translated into multiple languages. It's used in native villages all over Canada. It's read in schools all around this country, South America. It's also been translated into French at this point. Um, but at the time, it came about from a trip. I was on tour up in Alaska back in the winter of 1990. This was in January and February, and they had told me it was going to be really cold. And I said, "That's fine. I live in New Hampshire. I like cold weather." Except when I landed in Anchorage, the high temperature that day was about 10 degrees below zero. That was the high temperature, about 2 hours of daylight. I said, this is not New Hampshire. Got to Fairbanks, it was down to 35 below zero. And I was being flown on these little tiny bush planes, just the pilot and me. We had my instruments and mummy's sleeping bags so it wouldn't crack from the cold. At one point, the pilot looks at me and he says, "You see that frozen river down there?" And I mean, it's ice and snow everywhere. I said, "Sure, yeah." He said, "We're going to make an emergency landing." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "It just dropped to 56 below zero." And I didn't want to let on like that was a big deal. I said, "So what? I like cold weather. I'm from New Hampshire." He said, "That's great. 2 more degrees and the fuel lines are going to freeze." And that's how the month went up there. It was an astonishing time. And it was while I was there that I first heard across from Alaska, if you look at a map, you find the Bering Strait where the little islands lead across, pointing towards Siberia. And on the Siberian side, there's a bay, the Chukchi Peninsula. And a couple years before this, there were whales that had swum up the bay that fall looking for fish. And while they were up in the bay, about 20 miles from the ocean, the ice pack shifted and they were trapped. And then what to do? Um, it's a true story. It's based on the largest rescue attempt ever. This involved almost 3,000 beluga whales, 1/10 the world's entire population. And we're going to start the beginning of the story with a little bit of whales. So, if you can picture, we're going to head up into the land of ice and snow, the depths of winter, and the world of whales out in the ice. This is going to be the story, a symphony of whales. Oh, I suppose I should show the cover. So, let's bring on the whales. From the earliest time she could remember, Glashka had heard music inside her head. During the long, dark winters, blizzards sometimes lasted for days. And then her family stayed indoors, close to the small fire. And Glashka heard the songs calling to her out of the darkness, beyond even the voice of the wind. The old ones of her village said, "That is the voice of Narna the whale. Long has she been a friend to our people. She was a friend of our grandparents' grandparents. She was a friend before we saw boats of strange men from other lands. But it is long now since one of us has heard her. It is a great gift you have." And Glashka would fall asleep, wrapped in her sealskin blanket, remembering their words. Some people that look closely at that picture of her village might detect something kind of special in the shape of the clouds above her village that the artist put in there. The sea gave life to Glashka's village. The seals gave meat and warm furs to protect against the winter cold. In summer, the people caught salmon and other fish, then salted them to keep for the hard times to come. And from Narna, the whale, the people received food for themselves and their sled dogs, waterproof skins for their parkas and boots, oil for their lamps in the long winter darkness. You can see some of the fish hung up to dry on the racks. One year, the snows came early. For 3 days, a blizzard bore down on the village. When it finally stopped, Glashka's family needed supplies from the next village. Glashka asked if she might help drive the sled dogs. "It is not so easy to drive the sled," her parents said. "The dogs know if you are uncertain of the way. But you will know the way home. Perhaps on the way back you may try. Now, go to sleep." That night in her dreams, Glashka drove the dog sled. But the dogs did not follow her commands. Instead, they led her to open waters surrounded by ice. Glashka heard the singing of Narna, louder than she'd ever heard it before, and she awoke in the darkness of her seal skins, wondering what the dream had meant. The morning was cold and clear as the dogs set out. They made good time to the neighboring village, and before starting back, Glashka's parents packed the supplies into the sled. Glashka checked the dogs' feet for cuts. She rubbed their ears and necks. Glashka's parents gave her the reins. "We'll follow behind you. If your heart and words are clear, the dogs will listen and take you where you wish to go." They set off. Across the ice, snow swirled as the wind began to pick up. And suddenly the sled dogs broke from the trail, yelping, twitching their ears. "What is it?" Glashka's parents shouted. "I think they hear something," Glashka called back. The sled dogs pulled harder. Their keen ears could pick up high-pitched notes that most humans couldn't hear. But Glashka, if she turned just right, could make out the eerie moans and whistles that grew louder until even her parents could hear them. The dogs stopped short. They were right at the edge of a great bay of open water, surrounded on all sides by ice and snow. Everywhere Glashka looked, the water seemed to be heaving and boiling, choked with white whales. Her father came up beside her. "Beluga whales," he said softly. Glashka stared. There must be more than 1,000 of them. The cries of the whales rose and fell on the wind as they swam slowly about. The dogs whined and pawed anxiously at the ice. "Let's hurry to the village," cried Glashka. "We'll get help." Glashka's father, though, knew there was no help. "They must have been trapped when they came last fall, looking for food," he said quietly. "There's nothing we can do to free them. When the last of the water freezes over, the whales will die." The whales almost would look like the chunks of ice in the last remaining open water. But Glashka's mother remembered that an icebreaker several winters ago had rescued a Russian freighter trapped in the sea ice. "Could we call on the emergency radio? Maybe an icebreaker can clear a channel for the whales," she said. Glashka and her parents raced back to their village. They gathered everyone together and told them what had happened. Glashka's father got on the emergency radio and put out a distress call. "Beluga whales, maybe thousands of them trapped. We need an icebreaker. Can anyone hear me?" And far out at sea, a great Russian icebreaker named the Moskva picked up the faint signal. "We read you," the captain radioed back. "We're on our way, but it may take us several weeks to reach you. Can you keep the whales alive until then?" Some of the people from Glashka's village started setting up a base camp near the whales, and others set out by dog sled to alert the surrounding settlements. Everyone came, young, old, parents, grandparents, and children. Day after day, they chipped back the edges of the ice, trying to make room for the whales to come up to breathe. "Look," said Glashka's grandmother, "see how the whales are taking turns and how they give the young ones extra time for the air." As Glashka took her turn chipping back the ice, the song of Narna filled her ears again. She sang to the whales while she worked, trying to let them know help was on the way. Each day she looked anxiously for a ship, but each day a little more water turned to ice, and each day the whales got weaker from hunger. Glashka knew how it felt to be hungry. The year before, her village had caught barely enough fish to make it through to spring, and sometimes the memory still gnawed at her. Even so, she gave the whales part of the fish from her lunch. The other villagers noticed. They began to feed the whales some of their fish, too. Here they are, trying to chip back the edges of the ice. One morning, Glashka woke to the sounds of excited voices and barking dogs. The icebreaker had broken through the main channel during the night. "Hurry, Glashka," her parents called. Glashka pulled on her boots and ran down the path to the water. Everyone was gathered. Off to one side, the old ones stood watching, and they beckoned Glashka to join them. "Now," they said, "let us see what the whales will do." The whales crowded together in fear, keeping as far from the icebreaker as possible. On board the ship, the captain gave orders. He hoped the whales would see the path cleared through the ice and follow the ship to safety. Slowly, the icebreaker turned around and faced back out to sea. In the depths of winter, it would have been very dark, even in the middle of the day. But the whales wouldn't follow the ship. "They may be afraid of the noise of our engines," the captain radioed to shore. "I've heard trapped whales will sometimes follow the singing of other whales. We'll try playing a recording of whale songs." Glashka felt a shiver down her back. "Narna's songs," she whispered to the sled dogs. "They're going to play Narna's songs." And then the songs of the whales echoed over the water, deep moans and high whistling calls, ancient sounds from another world. But the whales would not go near the ship. Again and again the captain inched the giant icebreaker closer to the whales, then back toward the sea, but the whales stayed as far away as they could. "It's no use," the captain radioed. "We can't stay beyond tomorrow. Already the channel is starting to refreeze." Glashka was near tears as she asked the old ones what could be done now. "Wait," they said. "Let us see what tomorrow brings." That night, the song of Narna came to Glashka again, only this time it was different. She heard the music and voices of whales, but she heard other music too, melodies she'd never heard before. And while it was still dark, Glashka woke her parents. "I've heard Narna," she said. "I've heard other music too." "You have to tell the old ones," Glashka's parents said. The old ones of the village listened carefully as Glashka told them what she'd heard. "So, it is other music Narna's asking for," they said. "Long is the time, but once it is said, humans and whales made music together. Perhaps the time has come again. Let us speak with the captain." Quickly, Glashka and the old ones radioed the ship. "Have you other music to play for the whales?" they asked. The captain said he'd see what his crew could find. First, they tried playing rock and roll. The electric guitars and drums boomed, but the whales would not follow the ship. Next, the crew tried Russian folk music. It was softer, with many voices singing together. The whales swam a little closer, but still, they would not follow the ship. On shore, Glashka ran back to the radio transmitter. She had to talk with the captain. "I know there's other music that will work. Keep trying," she told him. The crew found some classical music. First, the sweet sounds of violins and violas. Next, the deeper notes of the cellos. And deepest of all, the string basses. And way up high, a solo violin. Everyone fell silent as the melody carried over the water. And the whales grew quiet too, listening. Then a few whales started to sing back to the ship and to each other. More whales joined in, and then they began to swim toward the ship. Cautiously, the captain started the huge engines and headed slowly out to sea. One whale followed, then another, and a few more. Soon all the whales were following the ship through the narrow channel, past the broken chunks of ice, back to the safety of open ocean. On shore, people laughed and cried and hugged each other. The sled dogs jumped up and barked, trying to lick noses and faces of anyone they could reach. Glashka buried her wet face in the fur of the dogs' necks. "Such good, good dogs," she told them over and over. "Such good dogs. Now the whales are going home." On board the ship, the captain and his crew raised every flag. The music played as the captain radioed to say the whales were safe. Now he and his crew were finally going home, too. Glashka and her family looked out to sea. They waved to the icebreaker and the disappearing whales. "And do you hear Narna singing now?" her grandmother asked. "Yes," Glashka said, "but it isn't just Narna I hear now. It's something bigger than that, something like a whole symphony of whales." So if you're curious, there are quite a few more historical notes about the story at my website. It's far and away the biggest rescue attempt ever known. They estimate it was almost 3,000 whales that day. Um, and if they say it takes a village to raise a child, in this case it took a village and an icebreaker to save 3,000 whales. So, Jonathan, you have another story for us.
Whales, so touching, so inspiring, and bringing such hope. This story is a bit silly, but I think it also addresses these pandemic times. It's called Three Trolls and Tommy. Once upon a time, at a grand event, Tommy went to the people holding the event and whispered, "Oh, well, that's all right, Tommy. You know what? We'll call your father and tell him to expect you home soon. Better go." And off ran our Tommy, left the big event. Well, he went running and running along a path, and then he paused and thought, "If I take this shortcut through the woods, I can be home lickety-split. Only, well, big kids say trolls live in the woods. There's no such thing as trolls, except on the internet. I'm going to take this shortcut. And Tommy began to go through a bit of a forest with immense trees, who seemed to be offended by sunlight falling at their roots. Thus, they blocked them out. Tommy wandered, and just as his mind was telling him, there's no such thing as trolls, there appeared one of those beastly giant creatures with webbing between their toes and nose, with long green hair and scaly skin. The troll said, "You look like a delicious boy. I'm going to pick you up, bring you back to the cave, cover you with peanut butter, and I'll have a peanut butter and boy sandwich." And the giant picked up our boy Tommy, whoop, and stuffed him into his pocket and walked off with a kaboom and a kaboom. And everyone please say kaboom. The first troll hadn't traveled very long before a second troll appeared, twice as big, 3 times as mean, 4 times as ugly, and better hold your noses, this troll was 5 times as smelly. Smelled like dookie diapers and skunky sneakers all wrapped up into one. "Hey, you have a boy there in your pocket. You better share him with me, or else I'll bobber you right on the noggin." Why don't you go find your own boy or girl?" "Nah, you better share that boy." Well, the giants argued all the way to the cave of the king, trollish giant. And when they walked, it went kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. These gigantic trolls arrived at a cave, and out appeared an enormous giant who had to duck his head in order to avoid bumping it on clouds. He had a huge belly, big enough to bounce an elephant or two, and he had long, sorry to say, boogers coming out of his nose. They went to his toes. He said, "Hey, you have a boy there. You better share him with me." "Well, listen, I found him, and this Demope says I have to share him." "Yeah, doesn't he have to share him?" "Silence, silence, silence," bellowed the biggest of the trolls. "Come into the cave, cave, cave." They entered the cave and put the boy on a table. He looked at the 3 trolls. The first one was ugly. "Go ahead, please, make an ugly face. I've already got one built in." Make an uglier face for the second giant. And now make a putrefyingly disgustifating face for the king of the trolls. Well, that gigantic troll said, "What were you doing in Troll land? I have a secret. I've got to go home and tell my father." "You will tell us your secret," demanded the king of the trolls. Well, the boy said, "It's a secret. I need to whisper." And the first of the trolls bent down, and the boy whispered. Everyone pretend you're whispering. The first troll, though gigantic, bow, 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 ran off, climbed up a tree, and shook like a leaf. "Don't tell that boy where I am." The second troll said, "You try to scare me, I'll bobber you, and I've got a gigantic fish to do it." Well, the second troll bent down, and the boy looked inside his ear, and he discovered potatoes growing in the second troll's ear. Still he whispered, so everyone please give a whisper. The second troll ran off, jumped into the nearby Hudson River. And you know, when I was crossing over the Mario Cuomo or Tappan Zee Bridge the other day, I could hear that troll going, "Don't tell that boy where I am." Go ahead and try and say that. "Don't tell that boy where I am." Steve's tongue got all tied up. Now, the king of the trolls said, What's that secret? And the boy looked inside the king troll's room and he found pizza plants growing inside the king of the troll's ears. I wouldn't want to eat it. It was, you know, pond slime pizza. But still, he whispered his secret. Go ahead and whisper. The king of the trolls ran off, picked up a mountain, put it on his head. Go ahead, put that mountain on your head. And said, don't tell that boy where I am. And the boy went home and said, Dad, I gotta tell you something. And the dad said, I better put you to bed. The boy rested, woke, and said, oh, I've got to tell you the secret and let you know how I frightened off those 3 trolls. It's this. See, I have got chicken pox, and I told those trolls, you get too close to me and you will grow feathers, and then you'll go bark, 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 and worst of all, you'll lay rotten eggs. And the trolls ran off. And as far as I know, they are still sheltering in the tree, the Hudson River, and underneath the mountain. But they don't know that there are things like, well, virtual Northfield, where we can come together to listen to stories and songs like the one Steve is ready to play. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. It's fun as listening to this story and remembering what it's like at Northfield, in the lobby where we'd often gather, and not far you could look out over the river valley and thinking about evening coming down. And so we would often end these evenings with a lullaby at the end, and sometimes we would end with this one. It's kind of a zipper lullaby. It's easy to make new verses, and even though I wouldn't be able to hear you, if I would love it if all of us would sing where we are, and if your families are gathered together, sing it to each other. And if you're by yourself in front of the computer, sing it to the rest of us that are online. There's be a chorus and different verses. It's called "Peace Like a River." And thank you to Bill for helping out with our tech stuff again this evening, and to Caroline for hosting us and getting Jonathan and me back together again for one of these. There's peace like a river tonight, peace like a river tonight. Peace is calling just like a river. There's peace like a river tonight. Try that part together. There's peace like a river tonight. Peace like a river. Peace like a river tonight. Peace is calling. Peace is calling just like a river. There's peace like a river tonight. Wind talks gently tonight. Wind talks gently tonight. The wind talks gently just like a river, just like a river. There's peace like a river tonight. Everything's alright. There's peace like a river tonight. Close your eyes till morning lights. And Stars sing softly tonight. Stars sing softly. Stars sing softly tonight. Oh, the stars sing softly, just like a river. The stars sing softly tonight. Everything's alright. Everything's alright. There's peace. Peace like a river tonight. Close your eyes till morning lights. And the angels keep watch through the night. Angels keep watch through the night. And the angels keep watch just like a river. The angels keep watch through the night. Everything's alright. Everything's alright. There's peace like a river tonight. Close your eyes till morning lights. And the birds in their nest all gone to rest. The moon hanging low in the sky. This night has been blessed. The wind's soft caress sings me a sweet lullaby. There's peace like a river. There's peace like a river tonight. Peace like a river tonight. Peace is calling just like a river. There's peace like a river tonight. One more time. Peace like a river tonight. And peace like a river tonight. Peace is calling just like a river. There's peace like a river tonight. Peace is calling just like a river. There's peace like a river tonight. So sweet dreams to everybody that's heading off to bed. I know there's some young ones. Sweet dreams to you. And I'm sure a few of us, if we wanted to hang out and talk a little bit, we might be indulged to be able to do that. I don't know, Bill, if there's an easy way to facilitate that.
Before we start that, I just want to thank Jonathan and Steve so much for this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful hour of story and song.
Thank you, thank you.
Everything. Thank you so much. That was great. It's lovely to see everybody again.
Sure is. Sure is.